With election politics front of mind, doomed to fail show votes have become an all too frequent occurrence in this chamber. But there is no more obvious show vote than the one scheduled to happen today, immediately before the August recess. In today's attempt to score political points, the Democrats are moving to a bill, H.R. 7024, that has been languishing for 6 months in the hopes of fabricating a narrative that Republicans don't support small business, children, or alleviating poverty.
You know what they say, every accusation from a Republican is really a confession. And that's exactly what we're going to see during the Senate vote on the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act.
While there are plenty of provisions in this bill that my colleagues and I support, the proponents have known this since before it was released, that Senate Republicans would need to change the bill in order to gain substantial bipartisan support. It is now August, and it has been months since any real attempt at outreach or engagement has taken place, which suggests that my colleagues are not actually serious about passing a bill, but are instead focused on election year messaging. There is plenty of evidence that today's theatrics are clearly posturing.
It's really rich to hear a Republican complain about Democrats engaging in political theater instead of actually legislating. But I digress.
Instead of moving through regular order and engaging my colleagues and me, the bill's proponents have used the better part of this year on a public pressure campaign littered with misinformation. However, the critical flaw with the bill is that it fails to provide meaningful tax relief to working families, and instead goes too far toward the Democrats' goal of turning the child tax credit into a subsidy untethered to work, which is fundamentally contrary to what the credit was created to do. For those who accuse Republicans of not caring about children, I would remind my colleagues that it was the Republicans who created the child tax credit. It was intended to provide tax relief to working families. Yet more than $30 billion of the cost to expand the child tax credit in this bill, about 91% of the money in this bill for the child tax credit, would go to individuals who pay no income tax. That isn't tax relief, it's a subsidy. And the bill's child tax credit provisions treat working family taxpayers as an afterthought. Not only do families with a federal income tax liability receive a mere 9% of the bill's child tax credit benefits, they also would be left waiting for that tax relief until 2 years after the benefits accrue to those with zero income tax liability. I've raised these concerns repeatedly before the bill was released. Unfortunately, by merely questioning the ratio skewed toward subsidies and asking whether working families should receive more tax relief, I and other Senate Republicans have been maligned for not caring about children and alleviating poverty. While Senate Republicans have also been accused of playing politics, the timing of today's vote, coupled with the lack of meaningful engagement since January to reach a compromise, confirms that the strategy was always a take-it-or-leave-it proposition in the Senate.
It takes a ridiculous type of person to reduce the child tax credit program as a subsidy that undeserving families are exploiting for their own benefit, when in reality, these are the people we should focus on helping, and they deserve the most support in our society. Language of the bill aside, the blatant hypocrisy of Senator Crapo and other anti-choice Republicans saying this bill doesn't do enough for small businesses while saying it's doing too much for the working class and impoverished families shows you exactly where the party's loyalties lie.
Republicans are talking a lot these days, trying to convince Americans that they're the ones who support children and families, not Democrats. The Republicans talk about supporting small businesses. They talk about competing with China. They talk about how terrible it is that nobody can afford a home in America. And they talk about cracking down on fraud in government programs. The bill that the Senate will vote on in a few minutes helps with each and every one of these issues. Now we're going to see whether Senate Republicans really, in fact, do want to help, whether they're offering anything more than talk. Over the last couple of days, I've read lots of comments from Republican senators who say that it's really time to wait, and if Republicans take control of the Senate, they'll write a better bill. So I would ask, better for whom? One thing I'm sure of is it won't be a better bill for the 16 million kids who stand to benefit today, colleagues, from the proposal we are going to vote on. And it won't come as any comfort to families who are getting clobbered on rent or the small businesses. They're going to fail if they don't get help now. The only reason our bipartisan bill didn't become law 6 months ago was because of the delay of Senate Republicans. I offered to make changes, Mr. President. I met with a significant number of Senate Republicans personally. They talked about what their proposed ideas were for compromise, and I offered them. I said it publicly in the Senate Finance Committee. Wasn't good enough, although they looked a little bit like the dog that caught the car.
One of the Republican Party's main political objectives is to govern and legislate as little as possible so that they can continue to whittle away any and all power from the federal government. The reason why I think they're doing this is because they rather themselves continue to be rich and comfortable, but on the other side make sure that the Democrats don't get any bills passed and don't have any satisfaction of coming to some sort of agreement, because they're not in the position, or they're not in the mindset of, oh, let's do a compromise. So you guys get some things and we get some other things. The other part, right, I think that plays a role is Donald Trump. And what does he want to get passed? A lot of Republicans, they're trying to adhere to him because he is the Republican presidential nominee, which is crazy, but that is the case. And so I think they want to make sure they don't upset him with different bills they pass. And you better not pass no bill that is actually going to improve the lives, right, of the working class, because we are in a vicious cycle of failing to pass bills that would improve the material conditions of voters. And right there, that just feeds in to the right-wing rhetoric about weakening the federal government's power. And so I think that all plays a role in why Republicans, especially now, are trying to make sure, yeah, the bills, they not going to be passed. If it ain't going to help out, the lobbyists that we rocking with, if it ain't going to help out the rich, all that, nah, we good. You know what I'm saying? And it's also to just look in Democrats' faces and be like, this is what you want? Okay, yeah, we're not having that. Just for the sake of it, right? Because again, they're not going to feel any consequences, not at least now. Maybe they will later, but for now, they're chilling. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.